The Galactic Council Chamber had stood for 12,000 years, a monument to diplomacy carved from the crystallized heart of a dead star. Its walls shimmered with the light of 1,000 worlds, each represented by their finest delegates, their most cunning politicians, their most skilled orators. But on this day, as the emergency session convened in the wake of humanity's response to the Krethak incursion, those walls bore witness to something they had never seen before: absolute, paralyzing silence. Ambassador Thakar of the Vrexian Empire, a species that had crushed 17 civilizations beneath their military might, stood at his podium with all 4 of his arms trembling. His translator implant struggled to find words in Standard Galactic, his mandibles clicking in a rhythm that his species reserved for moments of existential dread. Before him, projected in holographic detail that left nothing to the imagination, floated the remains of what had once been the Krethak 5th Assault Fleet. Except remains was too generous a word. What floated in that cold, silent display was a graveyard of impossible destruction, a testament to a fury that the Council had never thought to witness from the small, backward world that had joined their ranks only 3 cycles ago. The humans called their planet Earth. The Council had called them harmless. They had been catastrophically wrong. Thakar's voice crackled through the chamber's acoustic enhancers. This is what they did in 6 hours. 6 human hours. The hologram rotated slowly, and each new angle revealed fresh horrors. Krethak dreadnoughts, vessels that could crack continents, split open like overripe fruit. Their armor, forged from titanium alloy composite that could withstand directed nuclear blasts, had been peeled back as if by the hands of an angry god. Fighter swarms that numbered in the tens of thousands had been reduced to debris fields so dense that they appeared as clouds in the scanner readings. And at the center of it all, the Krethak command carrier Harbinger of Righteousness, the flagship of High Commander Zexthral himself, had been bisected with such precision that both halves remained largely intact, a surgical cut through 2 kilometers of military might. But it was what the humans had left inside that made the Council members press back in their seats, that made the Vrexian ambassador's voice crack as he continued his report. They breached every deck, every corridor, every sealed chamber. The Krethak soldiers were neutralized where they stood. No shots fired. No energy signatures. The humans somehow flooded the entire vessel with a compound. He paused, consulting his data tablet with shaking hands, with a compound that their scientists call aerosol fentanyl, mixed with aerosolized neurotoxin derivatives. The Krethak died in seconds, all 47,000 of them. A ripple of shock rolled through the chamber. The Krethak were renowned for their biological resilience. Their military recruits could survive in vacuum for up to 3 minutes. Their immune systems could neutralize most known toxins within hours. They were, by every measure the Council used, one of the most physically formidable species in known space. The humans had killed them all in seconds. And the High Commander? Someone asked from the back. The voice belonged to Representative Quill of the Havreen Collective, a species of aquatic philosophers who had long advocated for peaceful coexistence with all sentient life. Even her melodious voice carried an edge of horror. Thakar closed his eyes. All of them. High Commander Zexthral was found in his command throne, alive, alone, surrounded by his dead crew. The humans had filtered the air in his chamber only. They wanted him to watch every member of his command die on the screens around him. They wanted him to sit there for hours knowing what was coming. And then, the ambassador gestured, and the hologram zoomed to show the command deck. There, slumped in an ornate chair that had been designed to project authority, sat the withered form of one of the greatest military commanders in Krethak history. But his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes that had orchestrated the destruction of 6 colony worlds, were still open, still staring at something invisible. Then they left him a message. Audio only. Would the Council like to hear it? The chamber remained silent, but the absence of objection was answer enough. Thakar tapped his console, and a voice filled the hall. A human voice, male, calm, and utterly without inflection. It spoke in perfect Krethak, each word pronounced with the precision of a scholar and the coldness of a tomb. High Commander Zexthral, You came to Earth because you believed us weak. You believed that a species which values art over warfare, which prefers dialogue over destruction, which builds libraries instead of battle stations, you believed such a species could not, would not stand against you. You destroyed our colony on Proxima Centauri B. You killed 432,000 men, women, and children. You broadcast their deaths to our homeworld as a warning. You demanded our surrender within one standard cycle, or you would come to Earth itself and show us what your mercy looked like. Commander, you should have studied us more carefully. You should have wondered why a species that values peace above all else maintains the ability to wage war at all. You should have asked yourself what kind of species invents horror not for pleasure, but as a preventative measure. What kind of species writes treaties about which weapons are too terrible to use against themselves, yet keeps the blueprints in case they ever fight someone else? We tried peace, Commander. We offered you every diplomatic solution. We showed you our culture, our history, our art. We thought that if you understood us, you would see that war was unnecessary. But you saw our museums and called them weakness. You saw our schools and called them targets. You saw our children playing in parks and you decided they would make effective examples. So now, you know, Commander, now you understand. Humanity doesn't just wage war. We perfected it. We spent 10,000 years killing each other with ever-increasing efficiency, learning lessons in blood that we prayed we'd never need to use again. We created weapons so terrible that we banned them among ourselves. We developed tactics so ruthless that we wrote laws against employing them on our own soil. We did all of this, learned all of this, documented all of this, and then we locked it away and prayed we'd never need it again. You made us need it again. Sit here, Commander. Breathe air we allow you to breathe. Watch your fleet die on those screens. Know that every ship, every soldier, every weapon you brought to our space has been neutralized or destroyed. Know that we did this in 6 hours, while barely mobilizing 1% of our military capacity. Know that we could have made this painful, slow, agonizing, but we didn't because even now, even after what you did to our people, we still believe in mercy. Your mercy would have been extinction. Ours is simply this: survival with the knowledge of what you've lost. In 1 hour, you will be retrieved by your government's diplomatic vessel. You will return home. You will tell your people what happened here, and you will deliver this message to every species in the Krethak Empire. Earth is not your enemy, but neither are we your victims. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone. Come at us again, and we will not stop at your fleet. We will not stop at your border worlds. We will end your civilization so completely that 1,000 years from now, archaeologists will have to guess at what your language sounded like. We are humanity. We are builders, artists, dreamers, and explorers. We are also, when you force our hand, the most dangerous thing you will ever encounter in this galaxy. Burn this into your memory, Commander. And when you sleep, remember that we let you live not because we couldn't kill you, but because we wanted you to carry this message. Welcome to Earth's mercy. Pray you never see our wrath. The recording ended, and the silence that followed was so complete that the ambient hum of the station's life support systems seemed deafening by comparison. For a full minute, not a single delegate moved, spoke, or even appeared to breathe. It was Representative Quill who finally broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. What have we done? What have we awakened? Ambassador Thakar looked at her with eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. We didn't awaken anything, Representative. We simply forgot to look beneath the surface. The humans told us who they were. We were so busy looking at their art, their music, their literature, all the beautiful things they created, that we missed what else they'd created. We missed the fact that a species doesn't survive 10 millennia on a single planet, with 100 different nations and 1,000 different cultures without learning how to fight. They learned, they mastered it, and then they tried very, very hard to move beyond it. And the Krethak forced them to remember, someone murmured from the Zalthine delegation, a species of insectoid philosophers who had long studied the nature of violence. Thakar nodded slowly. The humans have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. We heard them speaking softly for 3 cycles. We attended their cultural exhibitions. We laughed at their jokes. We sampled their food. We admired their capacity for compassion. We never once asked to see the stick. He gestured to the hologram again, and the image shifted to show something new. Scanner readings, energy signatures, tactical data. According to our intelligence division, the force that destroyed the Krethak fleet consisted of 12 ships. 12. The Krethak brought 347 capital vessels, 4,000 support craft, and a marine contingent of 200,000 soldiers. The humans sent 12 ships and won the engagement in 6 hours with 0 casualties on their side. That's impossible, someone objected. The tactical mathematics alone were apparently not written by humans, the car interrupted. Our entire understanding of space combat is based on the Vrexian doctrines established during the last Unity War. Fleet formations, weapon ranges, shield mechanics, all of it designed around the understanding that space combat is, ultimately, predictable. The humans, he laughed, a sound without humor. The humans apparently didn't read our textbooks, or if they did, they read them only to understand what we expected so they could do the opposite. The hologram shifted again, showing a tactical replay. The council watched as the human vessels, sleek, dark, almost invisible against the void, materialized from nowhere. No warp signatures, no quantum displacement, just sudden terrifying presence. Stealth technology, the car explained, but not the kind we know. Our stealth systems mask energy signatures, bend light, confuse sensors. The humans, they somehow fold space itself around their vessels. They're not invisible. They're literally not there from a detection standpoint. The Krethak fleet never saw them coming. One moment, their sensors showed empty space. The next, 12 human warships were in knife-fighting range with firing solutions locked on every major vessel. And then, Representative Quill asked, though from her tone she wasn't sure she wanted to know. And then they introduced us to weapons we didn't know existed. Kinetic bombardment at relativistic speeds. Nothing exotic. Just tungsten rods accelerated to a fraction of light speed. The impact force was, he paused, consulting his data again, was equivalent to low-yield nuclear weapons, but with none of the radiation or electromagnetic pulse. Clean, surgical, devastating. They punched through shields that were rated for direct plasma cannon hits. The shields never even registered the projectiles as threats until they'd already penetrated. Another delegate, this one from the silicon-based Grethmar Confederation, spoke up. And the boarding actions. How did they breach so many vessels so quickly? The car's expression darkened. They didn't breach them in the traditional sense. They teleported boarding parties directly into the vessels. Our scientists are still analyzing the data, trying to understand how it's possible. Every species in the Council has researched matter transmission. It's theoretically possible, but practically impossible at any useful scale. The energy requirements alone should be prohibitive. The humans somehow solved it, miniaturized it, and weaponized it. They put strike teams inside sealed warships without opening a single door. And the chemical weapons? Quill pressed. Surely there are Council regulations. There are, the car agreed. Council law forbids the use of chemical, biological, and radiological weapons against member species. The Krethak are a member species. He paused, letting the implications sink in. The humans apparently decided that since the Krethak had forfeited the protection of Council law by attacking a colony world without formal declaration of war, they had also forfeited protection from humanity's more creative arsenal. And before you ask, yes, we checked. The humans' interpretation of Council law is technically correct. There's a loophole in Article 11 that none of us noticed because none of us ever imagined a species would simultaneously be advanced enough to have such weapons and ruthless enough to actually use them. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted over one another, demanding explanations, calling for emergency protocols, insisting on immediate sanctions. But beneath the panic there was something else, something that any objective observer would have recognized as fear. They weren't afraid of what the humans had done to the Krethak. They were afraid of what it meant about what humanity could do to any of them. Think about it for a moment. What would you do if you were sitting in that chamber? If you'd spent your entire career believing you understood the balance of power in the galaxy, and then watched all your assumptions dissolve in 6 hours? Would you call for peace, for containment, for understanding? Or would you recognize, as these delegates were beginning to, that the safest thing to do with humanity was exactly what the humans themselves were asking? Leave them alone? Ambassador Thakar raised all four arms, calling for silence. It took several minutes, but eventually, the chamber quieted enough for him to speak. We have already opened diplomatic channels with the human government, he announced. They have agreed to address the council directly. In fact, their representative should be arriving. He glanced at a chronometer. Now, the main entry portal dilated, and a figure walked through. She was human, obviously unmistakably human, tall by their species standards, with dark skin, gray-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that seemed to catalog and assess everything in a single sweep. She wore a simple gray suit, carried no visible weapons, and moved with the economical grace of someone who had spent years in military service. "Honored delegates," she said, her voice clear and strong despite the lack of artificial amplification. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the United Earth Defense Fleet, and I have been asked by my government to address this council. Regarding recent events," she walked to the central podium, the one traditionally reserved for the council coordinator, during formal sessions, and stood there as if she had every right to occupy it. None of the delegates objected. They were too busy recalculating everything they thought they knew about human behavior to worry about protocol violations. 47 days ago, Admiral Chen began, the Krethak Empire attacked our colony on Proxima Centauri b. They did so without warning, without provocation, and without mercy. They destroyed our orbital infrastructure first, ensuring no escape. Then they bombarded the surface for 18 hours. 432,000 civilians died. The survivors, and there were only a few thousand, were taken as prisoners and paraded in front of Krethak propaganda networks as examples of what awaited any species that refused to acknowledge Krethak supremacy. She paused, and in that silence, the delegates could hear the barely controlled rage in her voice. "We tried diplomacy first. We appealed to this council. We filed formal complaints. We requested mediation. We offered the Krethak every possible avenue for peaceful resolution. In response, High Commander Zexthral sent us a single message: surrender your sovereignty to the Empire, or watch your homeworld burn." Admiral Chen's eyes swept the chamber, meeting the gaze of every delegate who dared to look at her. "So we made a choice. Not a choice we wanted to make, not a choice we ever hoped to make, but a choice that became necessary the moment peaceful options were exhausted. We chose to demonstrate, in terms that would be universally understood, that Earth is not prey." "You committed war crimes," someone shouted from the Krethak delegation, a junior member, judging by the insignia, who probably hadn't been briefed on the wisdom of keeping quiet. Admiral Chen turned to face him directly. "We employed methods that violated your expectations of civilized warfare." "Yes, but war crimes. Let's examine that claim. The Council's conventions on military conduct forbid the use of chemical weapons against civilians. We use them against military personnel aboard military vessels engaged in active combat operations. The conventions forbid the destruction of cultural sites and civilian infrastructure. We targeted only military assets. The conventions forbid torture and cruel treatment of prisoners. We killed enemy combatants quickly and efficiently, and we allowed their commander to survive unharmed. Every action we took was against legitimate military targets engaged in an active war that they initiated." She leaned forward slightly, her expression hardening. "So no, delegate, we did not commit war crimes. We committed war. And there is a profound difference between the two, though I understand if your species has forgotten that distinction, after spending so many centuries as the ones defining the terms." The Krethak delegate sat down, and nobody rose to replace him. "Humanity didn't want this," Admiral Chen continued, her voice softening slightly. "We didn't join the Galactic Council to demonstrate our military capacity. We joined because we genuinely, earnestly hoped, that we'd found a community of species who had moved beyond the cycles of violence that plagued our own history. We came here with open hands and open hearts. We shared our culture, our technology, our art. We tried to be the species we wanted to be, not the species our history had forced us to become. She pulled up her own holographic display, and images began to flow through the chamber. Humans building, humans creating, humans teaching, healing, exploring, images of Earth, lush, green, beautiful, images of human children playing in parks, human artists painting murals, human scientists solving problems alongside alien colleagues. This is who we are, Admiral Chen said quietly. This is who we've always wanted to be. But we are also— The images shifted to show other things. Ancient battles, medieval warfare, world wars that had scarred their planet, nuclear detonations that had nearly ended their civilization. We are also this. We are the species that invented war as an art form, and then spent centuries trying to unlearn it. We are the species that created weapons capable of ending all life on our planet, and then chose not to use them. We are the species that wrote detailed conventions about how to kill each other humanely, which should have been your first clue that we understood violence in ways you never wanted to imagine. She turned to face the car directly. Ambassador, you said in your report that we should have been studied more carefully. You were right, but that responsibility went both ways. You all assumed that because we valued peace, we must be peaceful. You assumed that because we preferred diplomacy, we must be weak. You made the same mistake that species have been making about humans for our entire history. You looked at our ideals and assumed that was all we were. So what are you? Representative Quill asked, her voice thoughtful rather than challenging. Admiral Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. We are the species that climbed out of caves and conquered our entire planet in 10,000 years. We are the species that split the atom and reached for the stars despite having no idea what we'd find there. We are the species that nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times, and always chose to survive instead. We are resilient, adaptive, creative, and absolutely relentless when threatened. And most importantly, we are the species that remembers every lesson we've ever learned, even the ones we wish we could forget. She gestured to the hologram of the destroyed Krethak fleet. That wasn't our full capability. That wasn't even close. What you're looking at is what 12 ships could do when the goal was to neutralize a threat quickly and efficiently. If the goal had been total destruction, if we'd wanted to make an example rather than a statement, we could have wiped out that entire fleet without leaving enough debris to identify. If the goal had been intimidation, we could have drawn it out, made it last days instead of hours, broadcasted every moment to the galaxy. But that's not what we wanted. What do you want? The car asked. The same thing we've always wanted, Ambassador. We want to be left alone to build our civilization in peace. We want to explore the galaxy, make friends, learn from other species, share what we've discovered. We want our children to grow up in a universe where they don't have to learn the lessons we learned. We want desperately to be the species our ideals tell us we should be. She paused, and her next words carried the weight of absolute certainty. But we will not sacrifice our existence to achieve that. We will not allow others to destroy us simply because we prefer peace, and we will not hesitate to demonstrate to any species that threatens us exactly why humanity's first and most enduring art form was warfare. The chamber remained silent as Admiral Chen gathered her materials. But before she left the podium, she turned back one final time. The Council has a choice to make. You can treat what happened to the Krethak fleet as an aberration, a one-time overreaction from a new species still learning galactic norms. You can try to sanction us, contain us, limit our capacity for violence. You can decide that humanity is too dangerous to remain in your community of civilized species. She paused. Or you can accept that we are exactly who we've always said we are, a species that values peace above all else and will do absolutely anything to protect it. And if we choose the former options? Someone asked, the coordinator himself, the ancient Kelthrin whose species had founded the Council millennia ago. Admiral Chen's expression was unreadable. Then you would discover that the Krethak fleet was a demonstration, not a limit. You would learn that humans are very, very good at asymmetric warfare. You would find out why a species that never developed hive minds or telepathy, or any of the advantages you consider prerequisites for advanced civilization, still managed to become a spacefaring power. And you would regret, for however long your species survived, forcing us to show you. She let that hang in the air for a moment, then softened slightly. But I don't think you'll make that choice, Coordinator. I think you'll choose to believe what we've been telling you all along, that we're not your enemies. We're just the one species in this chamber that remembers what it cost to survive. With that, Admiral Chen turned and walked toward the exit, but she stopped halfway there, struck by what appeared to be an afterthought. Oh, and one more thing. The Council's intelligence services have probably already informed you that we have approximately 400 warships of similar capability to the ones that engaged the Krethak. I'm authorized to tell you that this number is inaccurate. She smiled that dangerous smile again. The actual number is classified, but I assure you it's sufficient to dissuade any future thoughts of testing human resolve. Consider that information a gesture of goodwill. We could have let you keep believing the lower number, but we'd prefer transparency in our diplomatic relationships. Then she was gone, the portal dilating shut behind her, leaving the council delegates sitting in stunned silence as they contemplated what they'd just heard. It was Representative Quill who finally spoke, her melodious voice barely above a whisper. I think we may have misunderstood what the humans meant when they called themselves an endangered species during their entrance application. Ambassador Thakar nodded slowly. They weren't asking for protection, were they? They were warning us. Warning us about what? The coordinator asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. About what happens when you endanger them, Thakar replied. The hologram of the destroyed Krethak fleet still floated in the center of the chamber, a silent testament to a simple truth that the Council was only now beginning to understand. In a galaxy full of species that had evolved past violence, humanity stood alone as the species that had evolved through it. They hadn't left violence behind. They'd mastered it, documented it, refined it into a science, and then locked it away like a dangerous tool that you keep in storage, hoping you'll never need it again, but knowing exactly where it is and how to use it if that day ever comes. That day had come, and now the galaxy knew. Humanity's mercy was a gift, not a limitation. Their preference for peace was a choice, not a weakness. And their willingness to talk was always backed by the certain knowledge that if talking failed, they had other options. Worse options, much worse options. Weeks later, High Commander Zexthrel stood before the Krethak High Command. His career in ruins, his fleet destroyed, his reputation shattered. He delivered Admiral Chen's message word for word, his voice never wavering even as he watched his colleagues recoil from the implications. When he finished, the Supreme Executor, the highest military authority in the Krethak Empire, leaned forward with all 6 of his eyes focused on the disgraced commander. And what is your assessment, Zexthrel? Should we avenge this humiliation? Should we mobilize our full might and show these humans what true warfare looks like? The chamber fell silent, waiting for his answer. Zexthrel, who had spent his entire life preparing for war, who had conquered 6 species and brought them into the Empire, who had never known defeat until he met humanity, took a long breath before responding. No, Supreme Executor. We should do exactly as the humans suggested. We should leave them alone. You counsel retreat? Surrender? The words dripped with contempt. I counsel survival, Supreme Executor. In 6 hours, 12 of their vessels destroyed a fleet that represented 3% of our total military capacity. They did so without casualties, without effort, without even revealing the full extent of their capabilities. If we go to war with humanity, truly to war, not just a punitive expedition, we will lose. And we will lose quickly. How can you possibly know that? Zexthrel closed his eyes, seeing again the holographic displays around his command throne, watching his fleet die in real time, while he breathed air the humans allowed him to breathe. Because, Supreme Executor, they told me. The human who spoke to me, he was calm, methodical, professional. He wasn't angry, wasn't passionate, wasn't emotional at all. He was simply explaining, like a teacher educating a student. And that's what terrifies me. They destroyed my entire fleet and killed 47,000 of our soldiers. And they did it with the emotional investment of someone filing a bureaucratic report. They weren't trying to satisfy a need for vengeance. They were solving a problem. He opened his eyes and met his superior's gaze directly. We were a problem, Supreme Executor, and they solved us. Efficiently, permanently, and with minimal resource investment. If we attack them again, we won't be facing their anger or their fear or their passion. We'll be facing their problem-solving skills, and based on what I witnessed, that's far more dangerous than any emotion could ever be. The Supreme Executor sat back, considering. So you believe their threat was genuine? That they could destroy our entire civilization? I believe they wouldn't need to, Supreme Executor. I believe they would simply continue solving problems until we stopped being one. How many fleets would we have to lose before our empire collapsed economically? How many colonies would they need to isolate before our trade networks fell apart? How many of our core worlds would they need to blockade before our government lost legitimacy? The humans understand warfare in ways we never bothered to learn, because we were too busy celebrating our victories to study what happens to empires that overextend themselves. There was a long silence in the command chamber. Finally, the Supreme Executor spoke, and his voice carried a weight that suggested he understood more than he wanted to admit. Then we will abide by the terms of humanity's mercy. We will leave their space alone. We will return their prisoners. We will pay reparations for the colony we destroyed. We will hope that time and distance allow them to forget what we did. They won't forget, Supreme Executor, Zexthrol said quietly. That's the thing about humans, they remember everything. But if we give them no reason to remember us as threats, perhaps they'll eventually remember us simply as the species that learned to leave them alone. One more question. Commander, the Supreme Executor said as Zexthrol turned to leave. If you could go back, if you could advise your past self before the attack on their colony, what would you say? Zexthrol didn't hesitate. I would tell myself to look more carefully at their history, to ask why a species that had never encountered alien life still maintained such a powerful military, to wonder what kind of species develops weapons of absolute destruction and then creates laws against using them on themselves, to question what it means that they built monuments to their dead soldiers in every major city, that they tell stories about their wars, that they create art depicting their own capacity for violence. He paused at the doorway. I would tell myself that a species that spends that much time remembering how dangerous they are has learned lessons we should pray we never need to learn. Back on Earth, in a small apartment in New Geneva, Admiral Sarah Chen sat with her family for the first time in weeks. Her children, teenagers now, growing up in a universe that had just learned to be afraid of their species, asked her the question she'd been dreading. Mom, did you really kill all those aliens? She looked at them, these beautiful humans who represented everything her species was fighting to protect, and chose honesty over comfort. Yes. Did they deserve it? That was a harder question. They made a choice that forced us to respond. Whether they deserved it, that's not for me to decide. I just hope that what we did means your generation won't have to make similar choices. Her son, 16, and already showing interest in the Defense Fleet Academy, frowned. But the news says everyone's scared of us now. They're calling us the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Admiral Chen pulled both her children close. This woman who commanded fleets and spoke to galactic councils, but who was still, fundamentally, a mother trying to protect her family. Let them be scared, sweetheart. Fear breeds respect, and respect breeds peace. Is it the peace we wanted? So we wanted to be welcomed as friends, as equals, as partners in building a better galaxy. But if we can't have that, if the galaxy won't let us have that, then we'll settle for peace through strength. We'll be the species that others leave alone, not because they love us, but because they understand the cost of threatening us. Is that enough? Her daughter asked. It has to be, Admiral Chen replied, because the alternative is being victims. And humanity didn't survive 10,000 years by accepting victimhood. We survived by being adaptable, resilient, and absolutely unwilling to go quietly into extinction. And if that makes us the monsters in someone else's story, well, every species is the hero of their own narrative. We'll be the dangerous monsters who protect our children, build beautiful civilizations, and extend mercy whenever possible. She looked out the window at the night sky, at the stars where her fleet maintained silent vigil. where hundreds of cultures now watched Earth with a mixture of fear and respect. They'll learn to live with us, she said quietly, or they'll learn to leave us alone. Either way, humanity endures, and that's all that matters. So what do you think? If you were part of the Galactic Council, would you have approached humanity differently? Would you have taken their peaceful nature at face value? Or would you have investigated the steel beneath the velvet? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you would have done in their place. And if you enjoyed this story of humanity proving that we're not the prey species others assumed, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more HFY science fiction stories. We've got dozens more tales of human ingenuity, resilience, and the countless ways we surprise an unsuspecting galaxy. Because remember, we're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. We're not the most advanced. But we are unquestionably the most underestimated. And in a galaxy that forgot to look beneath the surface, that might be the most dangerous thing of all. Until next time, this is why humanity doesn't start fights. We finish them.